So welcome everyone. We have our generous industry and alumni advisory board members for this construction management program here. So I am the program director, Sinem Mololo, and a couple weeks ago when we had our advisory board meeting, we take the note from our students and said, our students are anxious about the uncertainty in the industry. How can you help us? Can you make this time a little easier for the students as we're dealing all with uncertainty, and they need to hear from you. And our executive committee of the Industry Alumni Board generously stepped up and led this effort. So without further ado, I'd like to actually introduce the moderator of the panel, and we'll take it from there. But in the meanwhile, I'd like to tell our school director, Dr. Lee, is here, our faculty members, Dr. Zhao, Dr. Berghorn, Professor Rozowski. I see Mr. Marcus Matoyer here, and I see a range of, I see Jerry Giordano here. Thank you so much for being here. And I see our students. They're coming in, going out. I see a bunch of graduate, undergraduate, mixed levels of students. So I'm going to introduce now our moderator, and then we're going to go through this panel session followed by questions and answers from our students. So our students, as the panel is ongoing, please feel free to type in your questions in the chat so we can actually start taking them maybe in the order they come in. Also, when we get into the Q&A format, feel free to either virtually or in person just raise your hand and ask your questions. And then we're going to be recording this meeting to make it available for students that cannot be here but will join us later. I am honored to present you Mr. Robert Aydukovic. He is one of our alumni members, 1989 graduate from Bachelor's of Science in Building Construction Management program. He is a master's in real estate from Johns Hopkins University, and with some rich experience across the board in the industry. He ended up in 2011 with Maryland Center of Construction Education and Innovation. He has been a president there since then, working on workforce development, public policy, curriculum guidance, and industry research. So with that said, Bob, this is all yours.
Thank you, Sinem. Good to see you all. Thank you all for your time. We were honored to do this. So myself and my colleagues on the Industry Advisory Board, we make up what's called the Strategic Planning Committee. Dare I say, one of the most dedicated committees on the advisory board. Shameless self-promotion there, take it where you can get it. So what we did is we put together a list of questions. So I'm going to moderate and then dish it off to my colleagues on the committee. And first off, we're going to introduce ourselves, a brief background, and then really tell you where we are right now, because as the students are kind of tumbling into a very uncertain job market, uncertain construction and real estate market, we're living it on a day-to-day basis as employers, as business owners, as company managers. So you're not alone. And that's where we really want to leave you with this, that everybody's kind of going through this at the same time. There are some rays of light, which we will share with you, and then we can give you some ideas and tips and maybe share some wisdom of what we've been through over the years. This is not the first downturn that our industry has seen. It will certainly not be the last. And there are ways that you can try to capitalize on these. So with that gracious introduction that Sinem had done, yes, I'm a 1989 graduate of what was then the Building Construction Management Program, BCM. Shortly after graduation, I moved out to Maryland, and I've been in the industry now for 31 some odd years. My job is with the Maryland Center for Construction Education and Innovation. It's an organization that I started and currently run. we do a lot of workforce development and a lot of industry research. So what we are hearing, at least in Maryland, Mid-Atlantic, we may be a little different than some of other parts of the country. During lockdown, and we shut down the state under stay-at-home orders in the middle of March. Construction remained, by gubernatorial edict, an essential industry. So our construction industry never stopped. We're still building, we're still going off and doing jobs. What has happened, though, is other states, because Maryland geographically is a very small state. We have a major port here, but we import a lot of stuff from all over the country. So there have been numerous supply chain disruptions for getting materials onto our job sites, especially when they have to come through Pennsylvania, New York, and West Virginia, Ohio, places where they were shut down completely. So we have had delays in our jobs because of supply chain. We've also seen that some of the well-funded projects, the ones that are, I don't want to say easy because there are no easy deals, but the projects that have very solid funding and with Class A tenants or very creditworthy tenants, those are continuing. The projects that are stopping are ones that are A, heavily retail focused, and B, a lot of hospitality and hotel focused. So if you look at what's happening in the general economy, those two sectors of the economy are just getting hammered right now. So it's not surprising that hotel jobs and retail jobs are getting the plugs pulled. Office buildings continue. Housing, especially multifamily housing, remains a bright spot, especially affordable housing. And the true bright spot has been industrial warehouse. So just-in-time inventory, supply chain logistics, getting materials from distribution hubs into stores and direct delivery to homes through Amazon and UPS and US Mail. Those are all doing fine. So I guess we had to say the Maryland construction industry, and I'm speaking to you now from just outside of Baltimore, Maryland. Maryland remains probably about 75% at full capacity. On the job front, a number of employers, and I've heard this from 4 different employers just in the last 24 hours, they are continuing to hire graduates. They are continuing their internships. In fact, I had one employer said yesterday, they're still looking for a couple other ones. So if you want to know who it is and you don't mind moving to Maryland for the summer, put your name in the text box. I can send you the names. It's a great company, by the way. So workforce-wise, we're continuing, although there are some hiccups along the way and some things that we need to pay attention to. With that, I'm going to introduce some other members of the Strategic Planning Committee. So on the screen, I'm looking to my immediate left is Kevin Foucher. He's with Commercial Construction. To my right is Tim Procco with Target Sports, Ken Bertolini with the Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association, and Lisa Honaman with Viracon. They're going to give you a little bit of a primer, just as I have, to tell you where they are now, and then we'll get into some other questions. So Kevin, why don't you start and tell what you do and where you are right now.
Yeah, so Kevin Foucher with Commercial Contracting Corporation. We're headquartered in Auburn Hills, Michigan, doing work throughout the United States and Mexico with an office in Mexico. Graduated in 2000, and I think it was still BCM when I graduated, I believe, back then. But I just kind of want to take you through a little bit of like, you know, I know there's some concern and maybe a little bit of frustration from the students on maybe internships, like Bob had mentioned, being, you know, canceled or delayed, and even in interviews for permanent positions being kind of put on hold. And I thought it was important just for the students and faculty to kind of understand and hear from, you know, we're a self-performing general contractor, and our perspective on what we've been up to the last 6 to 7 weeks, pretty much. And I kind of broke it down to like 3 different phases. One March 23rd for Michigan, particularly where the majority of our work is. And then a few extensions, and then obviously the back to work, which is the phase that we're in right now. So our journey with the whole COVID-19 started about a week before the state of Michigan was shut down by the governor, and construction was shut down. We were on some large manufacturing facility projects, and the unions actually started pulling off the week before the governor shut everything down. So that was our first, I guess, introduction to the challenges that we were going to have with this whole pandemic, and how we were dealing with that. Then when the government shut down, it was a lot of uncertainty that we were dealing with. From how long are we going to be shut down for? There was a lot of question on which projects were going to be shut down. There wasn't very clear, what was really considered essential. We have a lot of customers that thought they were essential businesses to themselves, but not in the governor's eyes. Cash flow was right off the top of the bat. Okay, how's this going to affect cash flow? Because being a self-performing contractor, we have labor and material that we're out, and some of the payment terms of some of our customers isn't the greatest all the time. We got into the legality portion of protecting us, so sending force majeure letters to all of our customers to protect us on the legality end. We have some projects that have liquidated damages, and we needed to protect ourselves. We opened up cost codes, specific cost codes to track COVID-19 when we demobilized the projects and had to reorganize. And obviously now when we re-enter the facilities, just so we could track what this was costing us from a company standpoint. We had a customer that proposed some new payment terms. So we had a customer that we have a lot of work with that is headquartered in Italy, and they've been completely lambasted by this whole thing, and they have approached all their suppliers on some potential changing the payment terms. So that was something that was right off the bat. The first week we were doing cash flow analysis and what can we help them out? Can we not help them out? And that was what the focus was. Employees, what do we do with the employees for the projects that were shut down, for the estimators that were in the middle of projects that they're estimating? It was a lot of what do we do, with the employees at this point. And at this point, construction was shut down, at least in the state of Michigan, for 2 weeks, or that's what we were told. We identified a core team that was going to keep kind of bring us through this, that was going to keep reporting. We were fortunate to have a couple essential projects so we had some project teams that were still not affected, and we had to make sure that we're supporting them from an accounting standpoint and all that. So that was kind of the first phase, and all the focus was on what the business was on that. Then we went through a couple of iterations of extensions, of extending, okay, we're not going to be back to work April 7th. It's going to be whatever. I can't even remember how many. I think we went through 3 different extensions. So then it goes back to, okay, now what does that mean for employees that are still on, that their projects are literally shut down? We've had, shut down for 6 to 7 weeks now. We then put together a COVID task force team. So a lot of dedication was put to understanding what we're dealing with COVID-19. We put some protocol into, what it's going to look like when we re-entered the office, when we did come back to work. A big emphasis was put on procurement of PPE and like masks, hand sanitizer, bleach, cleaning supplies, face shields, all that. We had a team that was literally just doing that. Like many other companies, things were not easy to find. So there was a big push to do that, because we knew we needed to do that right away to be able to support the projects when we do come back up and running. A whole re-entry plan that now we're executing. A lot of effort of what this looks like. It's not just going back to work to normal. We did something pretty slick with some QR codes. We had a lady in the office that's kind of a computer programmer come up with some QR codes for some questionnaires and temperature monitoring and all that. Then it was maximizing like our April invoicing. So we really took a look at April and how can we maximize any invoicing we can get, because I mean, like any company that any of us are involved in, if you're not billing, it's going to affect you 2 months down the road when you're actually going to get paid. So that was a big portion. You know, we talked a lot about the financial and psychological impact of our employees, you know, how this is affecting them. This isn't a normal situation that any of us have ever been through. You know, we just shut the light switch off with our industry, with every industry in the entire, in the United States. And we knew that it was going to be a big affect a lot of people from the financial standpoint and psychological. We are a company that's about just under the 500 employee mark. So we did apply for the government loan. It sounds like, we did not get the first round, but the second round, we just got word the other day that we should be approved. So that's going to be a positive thing moving forward for us. We had to assess just what this is going to cost us when we do come back. So when we do come back to work, we know we're faced with some extra costs from safety orientation, entering the project sites. We know that we're going to have a loss of productivity from our trades in the field, just because they're dealing with things that they haven't had to deal with, additional cleaning and all that. So that was kind of the second phase. And now, thank God, here we're back to work. So this is I'll tell you, yeah, it's been a rough go the first 5 weeks with like everyone. I mean, I can see it on everyone's face. It's been a tough one, right? I would say the midweek last Wednesday, when we had heard the governor was going to announce that she was going to open up construction on the 7th, it was kind of the first time a lot of us had felt, okay, there's light at the end of the tunnel. So then it turned into, when are we going to bring employees back? The focus was that. How are we going to make sure that they're trained and bringing them back? Our superintendents, our foremen, getting trained on everything that we've worked on, our whole plan for reentry. We needed to go over that with our customers to show them what our game plan is. Go over it with all of our subcontractors, show them so they understood what they were going to be faced with when we come back on the project sites. Make sure that we get all the PPP to the project sites. Now there's a little bit of a concern right now that we're facing. Do people want to come back to work? And what we're finding, the salaried employees, they're fine, but some of them are dealing with real life issues where a husband and wife are both working, at home, and they don't have childcare because childcare is still not available. And they can't come back to the office. So you got to be more flexible. And, I think one thing we've learned is technology. We can run remotely to a certain extent with some positions in the company. So it's just being a little bit more flexible with that. But from the trade standpoint, we're with the unemployment, the benefits being increased for unemployment to the middle of July, we are starting to see we're a little bit worried about getting the manpower that we had. We were at a peak of work. It was unbelievable before when we got stopped. We were literally at right towards the peak, and we didn't have enough people. So that's and we had boomers coming from out of state to supply to help the local unions because we didn't have enough people here. So that's a little bit of a concern. That's pretty much kind of where we're at today. We've had a couple projects that got pushed, so we had everything pretty much scheduled really pretty perfectly. Some projects ending, the manpower is going to go to the next project. Some of those projects are now pushed a couple months, so we have a little bit of a downturn and some availability of some project managers and project engineers and field staff that we weren't dealing with before. So that's a challenge we have right now. So we are seeing a little bit of a slowdown in Rfqs. So from an estimating standpoint, we were gangbusters. So we are, but again, a lot of people our customer base hasn't been, this is the last thing that they're worried about the last 6 weeks. They're not worried about pushing new projects out at that point. So that's kind of where I just wanted to give so when there's frustration on, I haven't heard from HR yet, what's going on with my internship. It was supposed to start the mid-May. A lot of companies have been focused on the here and today right now. And that's kind of where we're at.
Thank you, Kevin. I mean, us the same way. We were going to the office every day, and March 13th, we shut the office down and said everybody work from home after that. And then the Monday afterward was more like, how in the F are we going to do this? So, we're all just trying to figure it out, and you can see by the backgrounds that most of us, we're all doing the same thing. So the companies have all been dealt a serious blow. So tenacity and follow-up is key in the business. I'll dish it over to Tim Procco now to give you the brief update, his introduction, and where they are.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. Can everyone hear me, I hope? So for those of you that have video, my screen says Kim Procco. I didn't misspell my name. That's actually my wife. To just add on to everything else that's going on, our parent company based in Paris was subject to a cyber attack last week, Wednesday. And we are still down today and, looking to be down for a few more days yet. So just wanted to clarify my name on the screen, first of all, and then just kind of communicate that we've had another unique set of circumstances and challenges over the last week. You just got to keep trying to reinvent yourself these days and get through it. By way of quick background, I am a 1996 graduate of Common Thread here, the BCM program at the time. Upon graduation, I worked for Performance Contracting in Phoenix, Arizona for a couple years, and then I guess I took a little bit more of an unconventional road and went to law school. And I graduated from law school in 2001, May of 2001, and then the bar exam is July of 2001, the end of July, and we don't get results until November. And of course, September 11th happened in between taking the bar exam and then getting the results. So for the students that are sitting out there kind of reflecting upon this and the uncertainty of everything that's going on, I can understand that because I was feeling that a little bit back in September 2001. So I am currently in-house legal counsel for Target Sports, again, based in Paris. I work in the US. I work globally. We have a global business. We are a sports surfacing company. Our biggest brand is Field Turf, like you see at Ford Field and other stadiums. So I deal for the most part with the sports business, whether that's high schools and municipalities or colleges and universities, on up to NFL, MLB teams, soccer stadiums, mainly in Europe, those sorts of things. So a little bit different perspective. I see the contractor side, but I also see the sports side of things. And in my role, I regularly deal with, I guess I would consider ourselves, we are a manufacturer and a supplier. We're also at times a contractor. And then I also deal with a lot of the employee situations. So a fair, a decent perspective on things that are going on. The sports world right now, I mean, everybody knows what you're reading and what you're seeing. At this point, our business, we're seeing, speaking to somebody the other day, and we're seeing for the most part, the projects are moving forward. We're probably at about 75, 80% of what we would typically be right now. Some of our customers have come to us and said, our facilities are not open or we're not doing anything. So can you actually accelerate this and, come and finish the project earlier? So that's been a, positive on some projects. Others are being postponed. We've had a very small number that have been canceled or moved into 2021. But for the most part, we're seeing a fair amount in the vast majority of that business going forward, which is good news, assuming that continues. And when I was listening to Kevin, it's always good to hear from other people, and it makes me feel good, I guess, about what we're doing, because what Kevin said his company is doing, I mean, almost exactly the same thing is what we are doing. We have offices located globally, as I said, and I've seen this thing go in different phases. Europe obviously hit first. Europe shut down, and we, in the US, we're still not sure how this was going to affect us. And then, in March, as everybody well knows, it started to hit here. So we went through a lot of the same phases that Kevin mentioned. So I won't duplicate what he said, but, from my perspective, the first thing we were looking at is, because I deal with basically virtually every state in the US, what can we do where type thing. And every time these executive orders come out, we're analyzing those. How does that affect our offices? How does that affect our manufacturing facilities? How does that affect our personnel, our contractors that are on site? So, we went through those sorts of analyses. The other thing that, I guess, from a legal perspective, and Kevin touched upon this a little bit, the Families First Coronavirus Response Act was big for us. We had to go through an analysis because we're a conglomerate of a bunch of different entities. We had to determine whether we met that 500 employee threshold or not. And under the CARES Act, you can apply for assistance as a company, and then there's also benefits that you have to provide to your employees. There's extended sick pay for 2 weeks that goes into effect. There's extended Family Medical Leave Act benefits that are available to the employees. So from my perspective, in dealing with the senior leadership team and HR, we did an incredible amount of analysis, number one, to try to determine if we were an employer greater than or less than that 500 employee threshold, because how you carried yourself, how you conducted yourself based upon that analysis was important. Then we had to implement all of those policies for the employee benefits that were available. We had to draft the policies, draft the forms. We had to implement those, educate the employees on what they may or may not be entitled to. So that was kind of our early phase, is looking at those types of things and looking how we were going to work differently. We knew we had to keep working. I'm going to probably use the term reinvent more times than I should, but that's the term I keep coming back to, because we've had to constantly reinvent ourselves. We have to do the same work and virtually the same amount of work, but we have to do it in a different way. So that was a huge focus early on as to how people were going to deal with that remotely. What fields could we install? What running tracks could we install? What manufacturing facilities could remain open? And what employees could keep working in those manufacturing facilities? You have to do it logically. You have to do it the right way. You have to do it in a way that protects your employees, but there's always this drive to keep the business going. So that's an incredible and sometimes difficult balance to achieve. And of course, getting everybody, in line with the systems and maintaining everything and the ability to work. Kevin mentioned cash flow as well. Cash flow was huge. We immediately went into analyzing, what money is outstanding that we can go after, and in cases where we need to, can we defer some payments for a couple months? The name of the game was get everybody to pay you, but try to pay as little as you can within legal bounds and other contracts. And so we have multiple leases throughout the companies in the country where we were, going out and trying to negotiate, can we defer a payment for a month or two, or, things like that. So we really went into a finance and cash flow analysis. That was a big thing. And then we kind of just stabilized as much as possible, and the projects that could move forward, and everybody just worked differently. They, work from home like everybody else has been doing. And that's really where we've been. up until about the last week or so, 2 weeks, I would say. And now we're getting into that re-entry, reopening phase. And so, we're looking at those in the various states as to how we can get back to work. What form is that going to take? How quickly can we do that? And that brings on a bunch of different concerns from a lot of reasons. Again, I mentioned manufacturing. We've got our on-site personnel, and then we've got, regular offices employees. We are looking at things in offices about, we're on the second floor of a building. There's 2 entrances. We have one entrance where people go up, the other entrance where people go down. We have hallways in the office where they become one-ways. We restructure cubes or offices and working environments as to, minimize exposure when people come back to work. So there's those reopening considerations. I had a call this morning where we have some of our on-site people that are coming in from Mexico to work for the summer. And, they wanted to bring them in and send them right to projects and get them going. And, we just can't do that. We've got to bring them in. They've got to quarantine for 14 days. They basically have to live out of a hotel and do very little to nothing. And you've got to, do that reintroduction process the right way and do it, as slowly or as quickly and as reasonably possible. So those are the sorts of issues that we're looking at now. I am very hopeful, very optimistic for the coming weeks. I think everybody's ready to get back to work. That's not going to be in the same form that we knew, and it's not going to be in 2 weeks. It's going to be a slow introduction. But I think we're going to get there. And for the students, I guess the message is stay as positive as you can right now. Reinvent yourself, look to ways where, we can use this, we can all become stronger, and you can come out of this situation better than you were before. And I think that's going to be true for a lot of us. And the resilient will rise to the top. So I guess that's kind of a semi-brief introduction, and whoever's next, Bob.
Thank you, Tim. Lisa, why don't we go over to you?
Okay, there we go. Hi, I'm Lisa Honaman. I am a 2000 graduate from not the same as everybody else. I'm chemical engineering, but I started out after college at Dow Corning at the time as an engineer, and knew that ultimately I wanted to be in more of a sales type job and stuff. So something that I will tell all of you, because this is what I had to do when you work in a plant versus working in kind of a customer facing when you don't have that background, is networking. So especially now, you have to network more than you ever did before. So really kind of look at those opportunities, use LinkedIn all the time. But I've been with Viracon. We do architectural glass. They've been there for a few years. I work with contractors, architects, and we're part of Apogee Enterprises. So Viracon hasn't been hit necessarily as hard as some of the other businesses that we own. But we are seeing projects slide a little bit. One of the things that happened, because we do projects all over the US, Mexico, Canada, is with projects being kind of slowed down in certain regions, especially like the West Coast, the East Coast. We have a lot of glass, and we only have a specific amount of space to store that glass. We had to procure, or at least try to find space that we could lease so that we could store glass, which is a problem for us because we need to be able to push as much through as we can so that it's ready on site when the jobs go. But we are still running we're pretty busy. We've had, I think I don't know if it was a case at our company or if it was necessarily like in the small town that we are based in, but we've had to stagger shifts a little bit. So our capacity has decreased a little bit just because we can't have everybody working all the time to try to kind of keep COVID under control and not, be a problem in our factory. We on the sales side, we were told basically the second week in March, we haven't made any face-to-face calls or anything like that. We've been staying home. Most of our estimators and like that they worked in the office, and then when the Minnesota governor said you need to stay home, they had to transition and figure out how they could have all of these roles, estimators, project managers, work from home. And a lot of them didn't have the capability necessarily. It's a pretty rural area. Not all of them have good internet connections, and there's a lot of angst for the first probably 3 weeks. People are trying to do their work while they're trying to make sure their kids are doing school. And it's been a challenge. It's changing every week. And I think depending on where you're at in the country, I'm based in Illinois. Construction here has been ongoing. We haven't really had too much of a slowdown. There may be a few projects that have pushed out a week or two, but for the most part, manageable. But Minnesota, it seems like they've been a little bit behind some of the rest of the country on as far as like cases and having to slow down certain things. So now we're sort of getting to that ripple effect there where I think things are slowing down a bit for them. However, our bidding activity has been insane. Our estimators are crazy busy. The contractors I work with in Michigan, like Kevin said, we're starting to get projects where people are going back and we're shipping out a lot more glass, but it's been slow as far as being able to actually get work done. I work with architects on a daily basis, and I will tell you that they are as busy as they were before. It just is a lot slower process. What I do is I help them pick out what glass samples or what glass they're going to put on their building. And I have to send samples to their houses. They have to then figure out how to get it to their colleagues so they can all make all these decisions. So it just makes things a little bit more challenging. It takes a lot more time to do all that kind of stuff. But it seems like, as a whole, the Apogee company, we are doing quite well. We have one business where they basically make all of the glass for Michaels, for like the picture frames and stuff like that. And that business is essentially completely shut down. So while my company might be doing well, we're part of a bigger organization. And so we have to be able to sort of compensate for the financial losses that we're getting as a result of having to have this entire plant shut down. We get weekly updates from our CEO, and he has a whole team where there's a bunch of people looking at safety all the time, how we can make things operate smoothly and safely. We have the, same extended leave policies and things like that. But just trying to get people who've never worked from home, working from home and figuring it out has been a challenge. I talked to one of my estimators yesterday, and she's in her 60s. She's not super tech savvy. She's never had to work from home, and she's struggling very badly. I mean, I try to call her just because it's something that you need to do, is check in on people that you didn't have to think about before. Her internet was down yesterday, and when you have that, Tim, you know how that goes. You can't do anything, and it's frustrating, and it's stress up, like adding stress on stress already. So just, that's kind of the way where our business is. Like I said, I've been pretty busy, but I can see where projects are falling behind, but I also see projects are still continuing. And I think there is a need. One thing I want to mention is, I know that a lot of you guys are looking at working at general contractors and things like that, but I also know from my perspective, I work with general contractors, but I work with a lot of subcontractors too. And I also know that the subcontractors are getting to a point where they have an aging workforce. I work with some project managers. There may be 2 or 3 people that are under 30 there, and everybody else is 40 plus. Not 40-year-olds are not anywhere near retirement. However, we need to continue to have new people in so that we can continue the trend of having new people and fresh perspectives in the workplace. So I talked to some of these younger people, and they're like, yeah, we need to get more young people interested, not just at the general contractor level. We need it at the subcontractor levels too. I know some companies that are same way, is they're kind of getting stagnant. They don't want to be busting their hump as much as they are. They want somebody to come in, a newer generation to come in and kind of liven things up and just bring that fresh perspective. So I think, there are those subcontractors who are looking. I know plenty of alumni from Michigan State who work for contractors all over, subcontractors all over the US too. So depends on what you're looking for and that kind of thing, but think outside of the box. Don't just say I want to go work for a general contractor. This is what I'm interested in. Look at some of the different subs that are going to be on your jobs, what interests you, and focus on that.
Cool, Lisa, thank you. Ken Bertolini, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Bob. All right, a little bit of background on myself. I'm a 1991 undergraduate of building construction management. And I also graduated in 1997, technically 2000 when I got my dissertation approved, right, Matt? With a master's degree in construction management / MBA. I took a lot of classes in the School of Business as well as specializing towards estimating construction. I now am the Director of Workforce Development for the Michigan Infrastructure and Transportation Association. What that means in a nutshell is that we're an association representing any work that's done on the infrastructure or roads in the state of Michigan. We are not a government entity. We are run by our members. We have over 550 construction companies that are members of our association, ranging from small, medium to the largest road and bridge constructors in the state. CA Hull, Dan's Excavating, Ajax Paving, Cadillac Asphalt, IFRAD Construction, just to kind of name a few. We have a board of directors that tells us, you know, the direction that they want us to go. We deal a lot with the governor's office. We are in direct communication oftentimes with Governor Whitmer. As a matter of fact, the Fix the Damn Roads campaign came from Mida. We kind of put that in her ear and she took it and ran with it. We are also in constant contact with Director Adjaba of the Michigan Department of Transportation. So we deal a lot with the government. We have a vice president of political affairs, basically an in-house lobbyist. Lance's job is to make sure any bills that are going through do not negatively affect construction or positively affect construction. We have engineers that work for us. I'm the Director of Workforce Development, so I go out and I work on, you know, making sure that people are coming into our industry. I have a number of programs that I work on throughout the state. So that's a little background on me. We are, you know, we had basically almost a complete shutdown, except for a couple of road construction projects. Everything initially was, well, at first the governor deemed it necessary, and our board of directors voted that they wanted to have us go to the governor's office and have road construction taken off, which at first surprised me because I thought, hey, you know, they're working, they're happy. But what ended up happening is they had 50% of their labor force was not showing up for work. So, you know, and they were not holding them responsible for that. You know, people were scared. The workers were scared. They were getting calls from spouses saying, why are you putting my husband, my wife, our family in jeopardy by having them work on a construction project that really isn't necessary at this point in time? So people were really scared out there. So, you know, we had a excavation company that's a member company based in Gaylord, and they were doing work in the Upper Peninsula, you know, 4.5 hours away from Gaylord, and all the hotels shut down. Well, that job was deemed necessary, and the workers, though, had no place to stay, and you can't sleep in your truck for 2.5 months while a job is under construction. Now you have to deal with MDOT, because if there are delays in that project, well, then, you know, they're going to be hit with fees associated with that. So now all of a sudden our association actually became busier, even though we were working instead of out of the office. We were working, you know, in our house just like everybody else. But we were in constant communication both with the governor's office and with MDOT, trying to figure this whole thing out. How can our projects be treated fairly? and they not be assessed all these fees for being delayed when something like this happened. So we had a number of people, staff people, that were, actually very quite busy in taking care of that. I had the owner of a construction company actually on a Zoom meeting like this with about 70 people on it, start getting teary-eyed because he said, I feel guilty because I am taking away PPE from the healthcare industry because my people require gloves and face masks and everything else associated with it. And everything that I'm taking is not going to the hospitals, and there's a shortage there. So it really, it's changed a lot of dynamics in the industry and how we look at a number of different things. About 2 weeks ago, we were asked by our board to go back to the governor's office and say, okay, let's get back rolling now. We worked, a lot of them worked with us to establish a lot of the things that Kevin and Tim/Kim talked about. There's protocol out there that needs to be followed, but it's all brand new. Somebody asked, hey, we found out that, I think it was in Wisconsin, the state allowed them to put a plastic shield in a truck, very similar to what you see now when you go to the store, so that more than one person could ride in a truck. So now, the dynamics of our industry have completely changed. A lot of the work that they do is side by side, right next to each other. So we've worked to establish, we found the ways other states have kind of, gotten around maybe doing some of this stuff, and we've instituted a lot of plans towards that. Now what we're seeing is, of course, the funding in our state for everything has gone down, right? Nobody's buying very many things, so the projected budget for the state has decreased significantly. So now the politicians are trying to find, where can we take money from this to put to this? And what we're seeing is overall funding for road construction, which was already kind of, measly. There's talk that there might be some taking away from that as well. So now our big fight as an industry is to make sure that the money that was supposed to be, delegated towards that construction project is going to happen. But we're already seeing MDOT come and say, hey, we're going to take this project off the board. We're going to slow this one down. This one was supposed to start in 6 months. Well, now we're going to put it off for 1.5 years. So there are going to be some, reverberations that happen because of this that I don't think we really fully comprehend yet until we really get into the midst of it. So we're back on the essential list. We've done a lot of work with the industry, but it's when you deal with 550 construction companies, what one wants, another one doesn't want. And what one wants you to do, if they don't feel that you pushed hard enough to get, what they wanted, then they're mad at you as well. So it's one of those situations where unfortunately you can't make everybody happy, but we have a tremendous working relationship with our members, like I said, with the government and with MDOT. And we are, if you will, without touting our own horn, we're a go-to association. We get things done. We are budgeted very well. We are funded very well from our members. So we carry a big voice wherever we go. So it's one of those things that we have been in a lot of meetings like this as staff to try to figure out what can we do to help our industry the most. And currently it's making sure that the protocol is put together, just like Kevin had said. A lot of our companies maybe don't have the resources of an extremely larger company that they're able to develop those things. So we are offering, hey, this is what the governor is saying, this is what MDOT is saying, this is what you need to do on your job sites in order to reestablish them, open them back up, and get them going as safely as humanly possible. Safety is a huge industry in road and transportation and infrastructure construction, obviously. There are workers that unfortunately die every year. And so we are always trying to get better and to make the public aware of, the safety concerns that we have. So safety now with what's happened with COVID-19 is just an added layer onto that. we are going to see the projects continue. The budgeting, I don't think, is going to be negatively adverse too much because, as we know, the state of the roads in Michigan are absolutely horrendous. The governor, thank goodness, has based her campaign on becoming governor on fixing the roads. So she needs to do that in order to be considered to be reelected for the next term. So we feel confident that it's going to continue to move forward, but it's going to be interesting to see the way that it's done.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, everybody. So if I can just kind of sum up for the students on the call, you've heard a number of different things. We've been through some downturns. So there was a downturn right after 2011 or 2001, there was a downturn because of the terrorist attack. Then we hit the financial crisis, which sadly was caused by our greater industry. So that one kind of drove us off the cliff, and we were probably in the soup there for several years before we really finally started to emerge out of that. Now we're into a global pandemic. What I can tell you a little bit is that what we are experiencing now, this is not a repeat of 2008, 2009, 2012, 14, whatever it is. That one was caused by our own stupidity. This one here is caused by something that's far beyond our control, and we didn't lead into it this time. So while it seems kind of bleak and dire now on the surface, especially if you're watching the news, you just heard from 5 different people who have been in this game for a while that things are still moving. Things are happening, but we are all now trying to adapt and roll with this shock to the system that this is. But this is by far, at least at this point, is not a knockout punch. So things will start to come back and things will start to return to some sense of normalcy, and there will be a new normal. So with that, I'll turn it back over to our panelists, knowing that the students here who are, excuse me, who are on the call and who will be watching this at some point, you've got graduations coming up. You've got a summer coming where you need to pad a resume. And some of you are going to be staring at student loan payments in 6 to 9 months. So yeah, all this happy hang in there kind of stuff does you well for now, but that's not going to pay the bills. So I would ask our panelists, and Ken will start from the back end and work our way forward again. What should these students be doing now to prepare themselves, to get themselves ready for the job search and for their eventual career starts?
You know, I think it really goes back to what companies are looking for in general, I think, and you guys can weigh in on your thoughts as well, is your overall attitude. You know, do you have a positive attitude? Are you a team player? You want to emphasize, you know, your ability to work with other people. So, you know, I would take the projects that you've worked on in class and that you've done well, where you fit in as part of that. You want to look at the culture of a company, and you want to make sure that you fit within the culture of that company. If you do, they'll see that as well. But it really is all about, you know, you've got the education, you've got the degree, you've taken the classes, okay? So there's no mistake in, you know, your understanding, even at a basic level, of what estimating is and what project management is and what scheduling is. But what you really want to be able to do is show that you can communicate, show that you can listen, show that you can ask questions, and that you're able to move the ball forward. When they see that attitude, it's almost like, I mean, the degree is important, don't get me wrong, because I have 2 of them, but your overall attitude really is what shapes them as a company. Most of our construction companies are family businesses. A lot of them are run by family, but they really truly are. Once you join them, you're part of that team, you're part of that crew, you're part of the family. They want to make sure that you do well, because when you do well, they do well. I think construction has changed a lot, maybe since some of us older timers kind of got out into it. It used to be a lot more, I think, throw you into the fire. There's a lot more belief now, and there's a lot better understanding on training and understanding what your capabilities are when you come out with that degree. They know all that now. A lot of them do. What they want to do is they want to find out, do you fit within their system? So show them that.
Sorry, I lost the mouse there for a second. That's great advice, Ken. Thank you. Students, we're going to be getting into some Q&A sessions. I did get a bunch of things coming up here in the chat regarding the opening comment about the internship. So glad to see that a lot of you are interested, but make sure you have questions for us towards the end of this. Put your questions in the chat and we'll get to them. Lisa, what are your thoughts on what our students should be doing now to prepare themselves?
You know what, I think what Ken said really is kind of where we should go, or what people do. I was talking to a contractor this morning and we were chatting about just the whole homeschooling that we're going through right now with kids. Teachers are making all this stuff optional. You don't have to do this, you have to do this part of your homework, but this is optional. And it's like, how do you teach a kid to do the optional stuff because you're going a step beyond? Like, do a little bit more than the rest. You need to somehow stand out from your colleagues and stuff. Do a little bit more, just kind of to give yourself a little bit of an edge. I feel like you need to sometimes do that, especially when, even now when you're going for job searches, you're competing against a lot of other people. What have you done, or what can you do to sort of elevate yourself to make you stand out a little bit more, that you're the hard worker, you want to be part of this team? Maybe do a little bit of extra research on who you're looking to work with, why are you interested, and kind of just that kind of thing to say, yeah, I'm willing to go a little bit beyond what everybody else might be willing to do, just because I'm so eager and I really want to work with you.
Thank you, Lisa. Tim, your thoughts?
Yeah, I totally agree with what's been said. Ultimately, good companies want good people. And, you're looking to somebody that's hardworking, motivated, all the terms and all the characteristics that are, a bit generic and overused, but there's a lot of truth in that. Somebody once told me when I started working, the way to be successful, or one starting point, is to show up on time, work hard, and get along. And, that's kind of a simplified approach, but if you have those three traits, it works. And getting to what Lisa said, I think that in this time, there may be opportunities that present themselves to you very soon that you didn't even envision 2 or 3 months ago, because things have changed, and things are going to continue to evolve. So what I would say is, along with the networking, which you started or continuing today, read about what's going on in the world. Read about how companies are dealing with this, how construction companies are dealing with this. Educate yourself on those sorts of things. Reach out to people, get thoughts from people that are in the industry as you are today. Get more thoughts, keep educating yourself. The more you know about today's climate and culture and how it's going to continue to develop, I think you're going to see doors open through those pursuits. So continue to follow the developments, continue to reinvent yourself. I heard a quote this morning, a kind of a philosophy that said, with discomfort comes growth. And I think if you take that to heart, we're in an unknown, uncomfortable time right now, but put yourself out there, reinvent yourself, keep your fingers on the pulse of what's going on, because there could be something lurking, some new opportunity lurking that you didn't even anticipate 2 months ago.
Very sound advice. Kevin, your thoughts?
I think right now, it's a tough thing to do, but be patient a little bit. I think with the country starting to reopen in different regions, it's going to take a little bit of time for companies to feel comfortable to start hiring again. So I think we're maybe a couple of months off from that. But I think Lisa had a very good point on when she was talking a little bit ago about the subcontractors. So general contractors, I think, have done a really good job, and because they have more resources and promoting themselves to universities and recruiting and all that. But I see the same thing that Lisa sees, like she's talked about, from the subcontractors. And I think that's something maybe broaden, be a little bit more open-minded, and maybe look at some of the subcontractor community, because I know that, sometimes they have a tougher time recruiting. It might not be the, something that everyone thinks of when they think of construction, working for a glazing company or a mechanical or electrical or any of the, carpentry company, whatever it is. And those companies, when I do see them, I could see there being an opportunity even during this time right now. If your back's against the wall and GCs are a little bit being more hesitant because they already have a lot of younger project engineers or interns coming through the pipeline, where the specialty subcontractors maybe don't. That would be, I could see that for sure. So yeah, be patient and maybe be a little bit open-minded.
Excellent. I would echo all of that. Also, I would say to anybody who's out there looking for internship or looking for jobs, that doing things the way that you were used to in this environment, those days are kind of over. You have to think a little bit differently. So yes, you have to be communicative. Yes, you have to look at other opportunities that you may have not considered before, say with a subcontractor or a supplier or a vendor. By the way, my first job out of Michigan State, I worked for a subcontractor in the Washington, D.C. metro area. We sold commercial garage doors and loading dock equipment. And on the surface, you'd think like, oh my God, what a boring job that could be. I mean, garage doors, yawn. The thing that you get with a subcontractor, especially when you get into commercial construction side, is that on a general contractor, you're working on a job. With a subcontractor, you get to work on all the jobs for all the contractors. So you learn customer relations, you learn how to run a small business. You learn all the different architects because you're talking to all of them. So the subway is certainly a ticket into this industry, and you get to meet all the generals. So if you ever want to be in a general contractor, they know who you are. You can make that jump from a sub to a general fairly simply, I would say. The last thing you want to do, I would imagine, is come off as desperate. So you have something to sell. You have a degree from Michigan State. You have your summer internships and your accumulated experience. That's valuable. But you have to find a way to get that into the hands of the people who are making decisions. So as my company, I've had to hire people, I've had to fire people. The last thing, think of what is happening in this industry right now. There are 30+ million people nationally out of work. There is an entire crop of construction management and engineering graduates that are in the same boat that you are. Offers are not going to be falling into your lap the way they were 2 or 3 months ago. You have to be a bit more diligent. Hitting quick reply on LinkedIn posts, that ain't going to do it. Take the effort. Find out who the hiring manager is. Find ways around the internet blind box roadblocks to find your way to get your name and your ambition in front of the people who are making decisions. Because on the hiring end of this, you have HR managers or project managers or folks in all of these businesses. If they do have an open posted job, they're probably getting bombarded with hundreds of different responses to that. How is yours going to stand out if you just hit quick reply or here's my resume? That, by the way, pet peeve of mine. If you're sending your resume to somebody, absolutely do not title it resume. They know, or you know it's your resume. Put your name on it so they know who's responding. But you have to be tenacious. And there's a trick to this, that you have to be persistent enough that they know you're still alive, but not so much that they wish you were dead, right? So keep hitting them, but be polite, but let them know that you are still in the game. That's how you're going to find the opportunities. I would also say that if everything is coming up blank, you heard it from us here in Maryland, you heard it from the subs, you heard it from our group here. Maybe this isn't what you want, but this is your opportunity to get another summer of field experience. Having that practical, hands-on, boots in the mud experience on a job site is extremely valuable to subs and to generals. So if you're not going to wind up getting the plum internship that you were hoping for, but you can go work for a framing crew, or you can go work on a demolition crew, that's going to look equally as good on your resume when it comes time to, or when things get somewhat back to normal. So be open to new opportunities. Do not think that things are going to work the way they are, and realize that you're going to have to work a lot harder to find what those options are. Tim Rozowski did have a couple, or wanted to add some thoughts. So Tim, if you want to unmute yourself and share your thoughts, and I'll scan the questions here.
Okay, yeah, I'll just be really quick. First of all, I've lived through several of these. I think the first one that I experienced was in 1983. So our industry is cyclical and it rebounds. And so, you know, this is an immediate crisis concern, but, you know, we'll get through this, and then, you know, in a year or two or a few years, things will pick back up. But I wanted to relight a couple of things that Steve Black said. So I asked him about, you know, what things were like in the Chicagoland area, and like Lisa had said, projects are continuing. Construction was not shut down in Chicago. He said many of the same issues that, you know, were talked about from Kevin and Tim before about figuring out how to construct. He said for them, their biggest issue is on their vertical work, figuring out hoisting and how they elevate people to their work positions within the construction. But Steve had a kind of a general sort of uplifting comment, and he said that really people who are working hard, that our industry, you know, prior to early March was in such desperate need for talent that he thinks that things will pick up really quickly for our people. So he had a pretty positive message. And then he said that, I was kind of surprised at this. He said healthcare was one of the areas where they have experienced some downturn because many of the companies or many of the hospitals and medical facilities, you know, were relying on elective surgeries and outpatient activities. And so that's a big revenue stream that has dried up for them. So, you know, hospital construction, you know, probably still strong, but, you know, those that are dependent upon a cash flow stream from those services. And then he had one other thought too, and that was that solar and wind companies that work in infrastructure, solar and wind, are ones that have seemed to be holding up pretty well. And then his public sector work, they have a big project at O'Hare that seems to be holding up pretty well as well. So anyway, his outlook was not that gloomy. You know, that's the report from Chicago and just from my own experience.
Very appropriate, Tim. Yeah, it's not that gloomy. I mean, there are some clear clouds on the horizon, and you know, anybody's guess on how this virus. I heard somebody on the some researchers saying we're not on human time anymore, we're on virus time. So, I mean, this may be with us for a while. There was a question that came in from Amar Mali that says that nobody has a clear idea from your experience. How fast do you think the construction market will get healed completely as to what it was 2 months ago? I'll take the first stab at that. I don't think anyone knows yet, Amar. I mean, it could happen. It could be months or years. No one knows. This is unprecedented in modern history. I mean, the last we have about this is 100 years ago with the Spanish flu epidemic. We're a much different economy than we are now. So I think some segments are going to rebound fairly quickly. Other segments, like the hospitality industry, may take years to come back. Others, board members, do you want to comment on that?
I can a little bit. I mean, I think the, you know, and it's kind of goes into the fourth question, Bob. I don't know if you want to, like, we were, the economy was rocking and rolling. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We were, it was extremely strong. You know, a lot of companies are coming off a very, very good year last year. I mean, even our first quarter, we just got some results from the first quarter, and it was our best first quarter ever. So, you know, but again, we're gonna be, this second quarter is gonna be a little bit of a struggle, and then hopefully we're back. But the government, I mean, the federal government is they are doing a lot to help the situation. There's absolutely no doubt about it with the small business loan and other things that they've done for unemployment. So that is a big thing. I know, you know, this isn't something like Bob, you said, it's not something that we created ourselves like in 09 from our own stupidity, but and I think there's going to be a reemphasis from a manufacturing standpoint, at least for us. We do a lot of manufacturing work. I think there's going to be a reemphasis on U.S. manufacturing. I think we've learned a lot. You know, companies are learning a lot from each other. I think it was Tim or someone had mentioned earlier. We're almost like reinventing ourselves a little bit because we haven't had a choice. But and as a country, I think that there will be some on the manufacturing market a reemphasis of maybe plants and not having so much, being so reliable on work or on products coming from other countries. So yeah, I think that, you know, the positives, a lot of companies have strong balance sheets and they should be able to weather through the storm. I mean, for us specifically, we had a very, very big backlog, and we're not even halfway through the projects that we're on, and they're for large capital programs. Those aren't going to stop. You know, the work is still, those customers have to get that work done. I mean, we're so far along, we're far enough along that they're not going to cancel them, right? So, and I imagine a lot of our peers are in the same boat. We're part of a peer group with similar companies throughout the country, and we meet with them every couple of weeks, and we've met with them throughout this, and some of them were hit harder than others. We were probably the most hit hardest because of Michigan being shut down. A lot of other states hadn't been shut down, but there hasn't been a lot of cancellations in the work that we see right now. So there is hopefully it's just be patient and get through the next couple of months here.
Yeah, if I can jump in, I totally agree with that. I think the next few months is key. I think Q2 is going to be difficult for companies, but we're going to find out a lot over the next 2 or 3 months as we get into this reopening, re-entry process. We've kind of flattened or leveled the curve to a certain extent, and as we reopen and you know, get things moving forward again, if that's successful and we don't see a spike again, you know, I think things are going to transition hopefully back to a new normal. We're not going to see it as it was before, but I think that's going to be positive. Hopefully, if that's the case, we see a lot of our bidding activity, you know, October, November, December, and on, you know, kind of gearing up for next year. So if things are positive, I think a lot of the work, as the majority of us have said, a lot of the work is still continuing for this year. My hope is that the bidding activity and everything else will continue as we get into Q3 and Q4, and hopefully get everybody, you know, with a backlog for next year. So, you know, Bob, you started out by saying we don't really know, and that's, you know, it sounds like we're punting, but that's really the truth. None of us know what's going to take place over the coming months, and that's kind of remains to be seen at this point.
Okay. We did have a question come in from Ahmad. According to your prediction, when things get to normal post-pandemic, will there be an increased demand for employees than before, or the opposite? Again, I think nobody really knows, but I'm almost thinking that what's going to happen because of this, and Lisa alluded to this earlier, is that we have a very old industry. A lot of the companies and a lot of the folks who are in the industry are well into their 50s and 60s. And it was really good boom times before this. So we may be looking, and some people were calling it the silver tsunami, meaning that there's going to be a wash of gray hairs that are leaving into retirement. This event, and while it's still playing out, this event may indeed accelerate the silver tsunami and get people who are thinking about retirement or thinking about selling their businesses or doing something else. They may be leaving the industry in droves because it's staggering the age gap in our business. So what does that mean? The work's not going to go away. As Kevin said, there's going to be a demand for people. And I think that while we're kind of in this stormy section right now, the overall future looks very bright for people coming into the industry because things are changing, especially if you can bring a work from home attitude, or if you can bring some ideas of how to do VDC and prefab and modular better than the people who dogs that cannot be taught new tricks. Folks on the call, would you like to chime in on this one?
I agree. I mean, I know in the glass and glazing and even just the caulking industry in general, there's going to be a flood of people retiring sooner than later. I know I've got a lot of people that had 2 to 5 years left. And I honestly, after the stress and all the stuff that they've had to deal with this might be just enough for them to say, you know what, I don't need to stick around for another year. I'm kind of done. And so I do think that, and truly, all the people, you go to any meeting and it's mostly people, any senior person in there, they're 50 plus, a lot of them in their 60s, and they're tired. They're ready to be passed the torch.
Yeah, I agree. Same thing with infrastructure construction. There's already people retiring. It's already been an issue, and it's going to continue to be. And Bob, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think this might push a lot of people that were thinking about it to saying, yeah, we're gonna go. So the opportunity for the future for the students that are graduating, taking on responsibility, your opportunity to move up within these companies, I think, is going to be tremendous.
Absolutely. Rough couple of years coming, but I think the opportunity for the industry overall is looking pretty good. I don't think any new questions have come in. We did have one more question. I know we have you until 4:30. And if you've gotten anything out of this, you see that we really love to talk, especially about ourselves. That was a joke, by the way. Come on, work with me. I know it's Friday afternoon. Anyway, to humanize what's going on and what we're doing, we asked our panelists to kind of tell a story about how we weathered a storm. So just briefly, when I was in your shoes as a student at Michigan State in 1988, 1989, back then the program was more or less a residential and light commercial program. So we did have a few companies on the heavy commercial side. The company that you wanted to get an interview and a potential either to intern with or a job offer with at the time was Turner Construction. They hired a lot of people, and they hired at the top of the salary range. So Turner was it. At the time, the Student Services Center, all the interviews were done through Student Services, and they had this archaic system that you could prioritize your interviews. And if you had a bunch of interviews already, you started getting pushed down to the lower tiers of being granted the interviews. But they gave you this little system that you could fill out, and you only get 2 of them per semester. And it was just like must have. I even forget what it called, but this is absolute top priority. So I burned my last top priority interview to try to get the interview with Turner. Didn't get it. In fact, Student Services said, nope, sorry, the docket's full. You've had your chance, end of the line for you. So not taking that lying down, I found out that it was the people out of Turner's Detroit office who were coming to interview at State. I got their phone number, called 311, got their phone number, asked to speak to their human resources manager, and I set an appointment. And I said, look, I know I didn't get it. I'm not on your list, but I really want this opportunity. Can I come see you? And she says, okay, sure. So one Friday morning, I got in the car, started driving, drove to Detroit, handed my resume to her by appointment, and said, if you can fit me in anywhere, please. I would love this opportunity. And I got it's like, okay, well, so we see what we can do. Then Turner would do a little meet and greet with all of their interviewees. I found out when it was. I think my roommate at the time, he had gotten one of the offers to come for a Turner interview. So I went to it. I figured, what's the worst that can happen? They can just tell me to leave. So the 2 or 3 guys from Turner, and you can quickly find out who was the lead person. I went right up to him, shook his hand and said, hi, I'm Bob. And he looks at me and goes, you're the guy. You're the one that drove to our office. Yeah, that was me. He goes, can you be at Student Services tomorrow at whatever time I can fit you in for an interview? And I said, hell yes, I will be there. So got the first interview. That led to a second interview round in Detroit. And that led to a third interview round. And what ultimately wound up happening, not a rosy story, by the way, but I got a chance to do something to interview with the top company coming to Michigan State. They hired 3 people out of our program. I was their backup for the job offers. So the 3 offers that they extended were accepted by my peers. So I didn't get the job offer to go to Turner. But the moral of that story is that I never would have even had the chance had I just accepted that Student Services said, sorry, you're out. So maybe that's something that you all can take away, as this is how you have to treat this situation at this point in time. That just expecting something's going to happen isn't going to work. You're going to have to go off and find some things. Others on the call, would you like to chime in with your stories?
So I'll just kind of build, and I think that's a great example, Bob, and that's an example that the students can take away today and use in these times, because you may get in those situations where you've got to be determined, you've got to set yourself apart. And, you know, it's all of these qualities that people look for in people and employers look for in people. You know, good companies want good people. And you got to be good people. You got to be somebody that stands out. You've got to be, you know, unique. There's got to be something about you that is attractive to that employer. And, you know, the 2 storms I guess I've weathered, I've mentioned September 11th already. The other one was, you know, the recession from 2007 or 8 to 13 or 14 or whatever that was. And I remember the date was September 21st, 2009. And we had a conference call with our company globally. And we had an edict where we had to cut 33% of our staff in 24 hours. And it was by department, and we got a list of people, and we had to go down that list and determine who was going to be in the unlucky third of the company to cut costs. And, you know, my takeaway from that and just experience generally is when somebody comes across my name on a list, or they think about me or what I do, I want them to say, I can't afford to let him or her go. I don't want that we don't want to lose that person. So, you know, you get in these situations and it's reinventing yourself. It's doing things like Bob said that set you apart and, you know, either make you that person that company wants to hire, or if you get into a situation now where, to the extent companies have to start looking at cutting costs, they want you on that team, and they're going to pass over your name and they're going to get rid of somebody else.
Good points, Tim. I guess from my perspective, it's similar to what you're all talking about. It's being a good employee, and this is really once you get in a company, right? Have that great attitude. Be the first one in the office, last one out. You know, that's recognized. Be willing to wear different hats. You know, if you're working for a company that's running kind of lean, you got to wear different hats. You got to be open to it. It's not just I'm a project engineer, this is all I do. No, you got to be willing to do whatever it takes. You know, think outside the box, bring new ideas to companies. What was I thinking? But yeah, it's just you know, it's your attitude. So it's kind of interesting throughout this whole process and having to deal with the employees. And literally physically calling all of them that report up to me in one way or another. people's true colors have come out, and you've seen, you know, in difficult times, you see who you want to be in the foxhole with, and maybe who you don't want to. So you definitely want to be someone that's understanding and willing to do whatever it takes for the greater good of the company, and that will be recognized. Those are the people that will always have a place in the company, no matter what type of downturn or challenges economically we might face.
And I would say I probably have been lucky. I didn't have a lot of issues trying to find jobs or things like that. But in the 2008 timeframe, I had a lot of friends who lost their jobs, and they basically did what Bob did. You know, you guys are lucky in a sense that you have LinkedIn is a great tool. I will push that a lot. You know, I've had my friends, when they were looking for jobs, they would see, okay, this person, I'm interested in this role at this company. This person knows this person there. And really just reach out to your friends or connections and say, hey, do you have a connection? Could you do an introduction to this person? I'm interested in this. And just doing a quick introduction. I actually had a friend in Atlanta email me a couple weeks ago, and he said, hey, I'm looking at getting a new job. I see you're connected with this person. Can you give me an intro? And that's all it takes for you to just, it's a pretty simple thing. People are pretty, you know, if you're connected with them, they're pretty happy to be able to help you if, you know, they know who you are, kind of know what you're looking for, and just kind of say, hey, I don't necessarily worked with this person, but I know who they are. I know kind of their persona and in what they do and what they're interested in. I think you guys should connect. And people are really open to doing that, particularly now.
So unfortunately, I probably have maybe 2 or 3 different stories of adversity that I went through. But instead of getting into that, I guess I want to piggyback a little bit on what Lisa just said, is that, listen, and I think Kevin mentioned it as well, get credentialed. You know, if you can be lead AP or whatever, you know, make sure that you're putting things behind your name that show that you have gone through additional training. Your education is not going to end just because Michigan State hands you, maybe albeit electronically today, but hands you a diploma. You are going to have to sit in classes. You're going to have to be certified in different things. And the more that you put an effort towards doing it shows that, number one, you're willing to go above and beyond. Number two, as you become a professional, the world becomes so much smaller. Okay, you start knowing people because you start specializing in a particular area or in a particular type of construction. And all of a sudden, you're nationwide, and sometimes even, as Tim mentioned, your worldwide network becomes very small. Be careful not to burn bridges. Be a professional. Treat people nicely. Treat people professionally. Get the job done, but don't burn a bridge because you just never know that, you know, even if you leave a particular company. I've known people over the years that have left a particular company. They've left on good terms. They went to work for another company. Then years later, they end up back at that same company that they were with years earlier. So, you know, take care of your name, take care of your reputation, because at the end of the day, that is really all that you own. And it doesn't matter what anybody else really thinks about that. It's just, you know, a lot of times my gauge over my career has been, can I close my eyes and go to sleep at night? Or is my mind whirling about all the things, I talked meanly to this person, or I did this. I learned the hard way very early on also, do not reply angry to anybody. It can only get you in trouble. If you are angry, take a half an hour or an hour. If you're still upset, take 3 hours. If you're still upset, take a day, but never respond just completely out of anger, because you will tarnish your reputation. You'll say something that you regret that you can't take back, and that reputation will go around. It's like a bank account. It's hard. It's like a GPA, right? For those of you that have studied your asses off and you've got a good GPA, you have to work so hard to keep a good GPA, and it just takes that one class to really knock it down. it takes that one thing that you do that is outside of your character that can tarnish you, I think, more in the future than what you wish it would.
Absolutely. It is an incestuous little business, and reputations go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
We are at time. Tim Mrozowski, you had an idea you wanted to share. We'll close it out. Panelists, we did have a question from Michael Hedvina about credentialing. So if we could all stick on after this to quickly answer that, it'd be much appreciated. But Tim, we'll close out with you.
I just be real quick. From my own experience, in 1980, I was laid off from our architectural company, and I experienced going from 80 people to 8 people. So I was actually in the last layoff, and in the end, only the owners were left with the company, literally. So we reduced by over 90%. Sometimes it's an advantage to be in the first round of layoffs because there are still other jobs available. It was a little bit harder being in one of the last layoffs. Anyway, the point that I want to make is, and this kind of dovetails with what Ken was saying, is some of you, you're short term right now for this summer. You may not have an internship, or you may not have summer employment. I would encourage you to do what Ken said, is to use your time productively. Don't just sit back and worry about it. And so for myself, what I did was I literally read the entire code book. I studied for my architectural exam and took my architectural exam, got my license, and I learned how to make beer. So those were three skills. And then shortly after that, I got my next architectural job in that. But the point is think about your lead GA. I think would be a great one. Take a project management, professional organization class, or a CMA class, or something like this. So build your resume. Use your time productively this summer. Work on your master's degree. Take a class, so that you're not just you're wasting your time. Use it to your best of efforts right now.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody. For those who want to stay on the call, the question from Michael Hedvina is talking about credentialing. It says, looking to bolster my resume, I'm interested in 2 things: becoming first aid CPR certified and or becoming LEED Green certified. From a recruiter's perspective, does anyone feel that holds more value than the other coming directly out of college? Folks, you want to take this one?
I want to respond to the lead GA. I think it's pretty much expected right now that a graduate from a construction management program has exposure to LEED and understands it. So I know this for a fact from most universities, that many of the students are coming out as lead GA. So from my perspective, if you don't have that, then you're a little bit behind the curve from a lot of our competitors.
Tim, do you have further thought on that, or that was it?
I agree with what Tim had just said. I would go for that lead G. Yes, definitely.
Okay. Anyone else? No. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. It is 4:30 on a Friday. I think that's enough for today. Unless you need to get back to work, then go off and do so. I'm thinking it's almost martini time here in metropolitan Baltimore. So good luck with everything. And it's not as bad as you think. It's just going to take a little bit more work. And there is light at the end of the tunnel. So go green, go white, and go on. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much to our panelists. Bob, thank you so much for helping put this together. And good luck to all of our students that are graduating and also going out to the world for summer. We look forward